A few years back, I took the TransSiberian train twice. I traveled from Moscow to Beijing and back. And what I remember from planning my trip is that I could find very little information online about how to plan it, especially as a solo traveler. So this video is everything I would have wanted to know when I was planning my Trans-Siberian adventure. We'll start with the abstracts, like why you may want to take the train and who you might meet there, and then get into the specifics: how to get the tickets, what the cabins look like, what food to take, safety, and more. So here's everything you need to know about taking the Trans-Siberian in under 20 minutes. If you're still in the early planning stages of your trip, you may be wondering, why am I doing this at all? It's a valid question. I sure did. The Trans-Siberian is by no means an efficient way to get from A to B. In fact, at the time when I'm making this video, it is still the longest continuous train ride in the world. The full route takes you from Moscow all the way to Beijing and lasts over 6 full days. But you can also travel from Moscow to Vladivostok, which is a shorter journey, but will be enough to say that you have crossed Siberia on a train. Though I sincerely recommend you go all the way from Russia to China. And here's why. As an experience, the Trans-Siberian is definitely one of a kind. It's one of the best instances of slow travel I've ever witnessed. Not necessarily because of the time it takes, but because of how time works on the train. You get to see a lot on this train. The Trans-Siberian is not a high-speed train, it's actually very slow. So you get to take lots of footage over a cup of tea without doing the legwork. You also get to actually see the places you're traveling through instead of just having them whoosh by outside your window. If you're lucky, you may even get to meet people along the way, and not just fellow passengers. People selling snacks at the train stations, train attendants, restaurant workers. Believe me when I say, these are the people with stories to tell. Speaking of fellow passengers, one of the best things about the Trans-Siberian is that here you can be as much of an introvert or an extrovert as you want. You can spend the whole trip comfortably alone in your cabin, or you can head to the restaurant car where all the travel mingling happens. Here I got to meet some truly interesting people and play an old Mongolian board game with dice made of yak bones. And the people who take the Trans-Siberian are also a very mixed crowd. I met an American family traveling together before their kids went off to college, a mother and daughter who took a Russian literature class and were taking the train while reading Dostoevsky. I'm not making this up. A solo traveling woman from Australia who I got to bond with over risky coffee runs, a mother, daughter, and grandmother who worked together in the train's restaurant car, and lots more people. And this was still the low season on the Trans-Siberian. Now, there is more than one way to go from Moscow to Beijing by train and back. And there are actually 2 Trans-Siberian trains for you to choose from. The first one is the Russian train, usually numbered 2019, that goes from Russia to China via Manchuria. The second is the Chinese train, usually numbered 34, that goes via Mongolia. In this video, I will be talking about the Chinese train because that's the one I took. And I think this is also the one you should take. The main reason for this recommendation is that the Chinese train travels through Mongolia. And even though this may require some extra visa paperwork, depending on where you come from, Mongolia is a remarkably mind-bending place, and it's absolutely worth visiting, even if it's just through the dusty train windows. Once you are sure you're ready to take the train and have picked your route, you will need to buy tickets. This may not be quite as simple as you might hope. As this is an international train, in most cases you won't be able to buy the tickets online. And even if you're already in Russia or China, you will probably need to go to the train station and get them in person. And not just any train station. For example, when I was trying to buy tickets from Beijing to Moscow in Shenzhen, a city in southern China, I was told that I could only buy them at a train station in Beijing. So I found that the easiest way to book the ticket in China was to go through a travel agency. I will link the agency I used to buy my ticket in the description down below. For an extra fee, they've made the whole process very smooth and easy. So how expensive is the Trans-Siberian? As with most travel, it depends on how much comfort you want. There are 2 main types of cabins you can get on the train. One is a double cabin, which is considered first class. It sleeps 2 people, but both times I booked it, I was there alone. The price for a one-way ticket in the first-class cabin will range from about $800 to $1,200, depending on when and how you get your ticket. For this price, you get a cabin that looks like this, and even comes with a shower. So this is what a single cabin looks like on a Chinese train number 4, Trans-Mongolian. For some reason there is a second berth. Then there is this one. Then there is this really royal looking, I don't know, armchair of sorts. Coffee. Still Russia. And yes, there is some sort of shower here. Looks really creepy. But and a door that leads someplace. I guess the shower is for these two cabins here. So, yay. One thing to note, you will be sharing the shower with the neighboring cabin, and there are two doors on both sides. So make sure to lock the door when you are taking a shower. With that said, don't get too excited when I say shower. While the onboard bathroom does look rather nice, the water pressure is pretty much non-existent and the water is mostly cold. So you will basically need to squat down to take a shower and convince yourself that a cold shower comes with lots of health benefits. Now, your second option is a 4-person cabin, which is considered second class. Here you will have 4 beds in one room, no shower, and a less peculiar decor. But from what I've seen on both trips, second-class cabins are more lively, people here interact more, and the atmosphere, though louder, look to be friendly and fun. Prices for second-class cabins range from $500 to $700. The high season for taking the TransSiberian, as for most things in our lives, is the summer. This is when you get the best views. But with the best views, you also get more people. This means you will need to book tickets in advance and be ready for all the train cars to be full. Anything outside of the summer month is pretty much considered low season. I took my first TransSiberian trip in April, and for the first day, I was completely alone in the 2 carriages on the train. My trip back was in October, and though there were more people on the train, most cabins had only 1 to 2 passengers, and it still felt like a very introvert-friendly journey. Depending on the type of train you take, your passport country, and where you are traveling from, you may need to do some visa prep for your trip. If you are taking the Chinese train, numbered 34, you will be going through 3 countries: China, Russia, and Mongolia. If you take the Russian train, 1920, you will need visas for 2 countries, Russia and China. So the whole trip on the train number 4 takes 6 nights. If you're taking it from Moscow, you take off on Tuesday night and you arrive in Beijing on Monday morning. What happens during these 6 nights? Well, it depends on you. There is no Wi-Fi on the train, and the best way to stay connected is to get an eSIM through a service like Airlo, and then make sure to activate a new SIM every time you cross to a new country. But keep in mind that there is no cell coverage for a lot of the journey, so it's best to have some Netflix downloads ready, audiobooks, or actual books if you don't have motion sickness. Reading a paper book on a slow train like this actually seems like a very wholesome experience. Board games can also be a fun choice if you're traveling in a group. A funny thing happened to me on my first trip. I accidentally downloaded only one movie on my iPad, Strangers Pray at Night, and I ended up watching it before bed every night for 6 nights straight. I may have arrived in Beijing feeling rather paranoid, but now I have a lot of love for the whole Stranger saga, even the latest movies which everyone hates. The thing to watch out for on the TransSiberian is the change in time zones. When you fly, you know you will be arriving in a different time zone and you have some jet lag for a few days, but that's pretty much it. On the TransSiberian, this change is slow. So every time you wake up at what you think is the same time, you're actually waking up at different times. And this can mess with your head quite a bit. So it may be best to set your alarm and adjust it slowly to the new time zone you will be entering the next day. I remember going to sleep somewhere in Siberia and then waking up in the middle of the day in the Gobi Desert with the sun beating down on my face. And this felt like a very rough adjustment, even when compared to the headaches of a jet lag. Windows and views will be the focus of your TransSiberian journey. Staring out the window on the train is a classic, and on the TransSiberian this takes on an almost cult-like hue. As there is not much to do on the train, and you are there for 6 nights, and you've booked the trip specifically for this experience, most people are here for the views, and it shows. A lot of people travel with professional cameras, and the talk in the dining car is often about the best view catches of the day. The one thing to keep in mind here is that the windows on the train are very dusty, and this is upsetting for a lot of travelers who take the train specifically to take photos or to make videos. But you can ask the train attendant to open the windows in the train hall or show you how to do it yourself. I tried this once and was given a key to open the windows in my carriage. This was an absolute game changer and gave me this beautiful moment with Lake Baikal. If you're wondering what part of the journey offers the best views, my vote would be for Mongolia. Most of the country is steppe and the Gobi Desert, but you get exclusive and very rare glimpses of life. You see yurts, skyscrapers, people at train stations, and sand grain by sand grain, Mongolia seeps into your mind and fills it with one thought. One day, you'll come back. When crossing Russia, which is a big part of the journey and takes more than 3 days, the best views will be in Siberia. You will see lots of birch trees, log cabins, and very few people. One view to look out for is Lake Baikal. The views of China on the train are also remarkable. I probably didn't appreciate them in full as I lived in China for close to a decade. But as you approach Beijing, keep your eyes open for this beautiful gorge that the train travels through. You get to see China in all of its beautiful contrasts, urban development making its way through wild nature. Is the TransSiberian safe? As a solo traveler, this was one of the biggest questions I didn't have an answer to. I first heard about the TransSiberian in a sports bar. I think it was back in 2010 when the Netherlands was in the FIFA World Cup finals. I heard about it from a Dutch student who was planning to take the train and then return to China. And then we never heard from him again. So it became a running joke with my friends and I, and led me to subconsciously consider the TransSiberian as not really a safe journey. And I will be honest, when I did book the trip, I did feel quite uneasy. In fact, my first night on the train, I boarded up my cabin door with a suitcase. But as the journey went on, I felt more and more relaxed. Unless you are being purposefully reckless, there is very little potential danger here. But there are a few things to watch out for. If you are traveling from Moscow, you will be boarding the train quite late from the Yaroslavsky train station. This area is known as the Three-Station Square. It's not the nicest area in the city, and while I was waiting for my train, I did see at least 3 random fights take place. Another thing to be careful about is to not get left behind at one of the train stops. It's easy to lose track of time or to misunderstand the train attendant, and some stations the train will be stopping at are really way off the beaten track, so getting left behind here can be a very unpleasant experience. Apart from that, taking the train felt really safe, and once again, if you do pay attention and don't do anything careless, I'm pretty sure that you'll have a very nice and smooth experience. And now let's talk food. There are 2 biggest things that make up a train journey: views and food. Both times I took the TransSiberian, I got the wrong food. The first time I took way too little food, most of which were strange low-calorie choices. So by day 3, I started eating gifts I was bringing to my friends in China. On the way back, I overcorrected and got so many instant noodle packs that I should have arrived with appendicitis. So my suggestion when it comes to food would be to plan your menu day by day. Think what you will eat for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and keep in mind that trains do tend to make people hungry. There are also dining cars on the train, and they are a must visit, if not for the food, then for the ambiance. Every leg of the journey gets a different dining car, so when you're crossing Russia, a Russian dining car will be attached to the train. In Mongolia, this will be replaced with a Mongolian dining car, and in China you will get the full Chinese dining experience. Just like the countries, the dining cars are very different. The Russian dining car is sort of the party area. You can buy alcohol, you can try borscht. People come here to drink overpriced beers, laugh loudly, and exchange stories.
Apparently there's like 80 different games that you can play.
With these?
In Mongolia. So these were given to me from the travelling spoon place that I went.
The Mongolian restaurant car is all about the aesthetics. It has beautiful and very detailed decor. The restaurant is run by a rather strict woman who doesn't let visitors take pictures of the menu. But even without the pictures, I remember that the food was great, and out of all the restaurants on the TransSiberian, I think the Mongolian had the best prices. And if I may recommend an experience, do come into the restaurant when passing the Gobi Desert and have your breakfast, lunch or dinner with this view. Meals on the TransSiberian can also be an adventure. Here I mean food and coffee runs. It's definitely important to be careful with these and not push your luck. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that some of the best foods I've tried on the TransSiberian came from small train stations and kiosks. Not necessarily because of the taste, but because of the sense of adventure that came with them. The Chinese dining car is the most minimalistic. On both of my trips, it seemed like people came here to eat, and this was pretty much it. If you've never experienced Chinese food before, here you will get a proper introduction. Though some dishes were a surprise, even to me. One of the funnest memories I have from the TransSiberian has to do with this meal ticket. All the passengers got it after crossing the border to China, which is one of the major events on the TransSiberian. We all got back on the train around 3 a.m., and the voucher said we had to be up for breakfast at 6 a.m. And most travelers actually showed up, because never underestimate the appeal of a free meal. So, after a sleepless night and the stress of border crossing, we were all hoping for a hearty breakfast worth the early get-up. But our 6 a.m. breakfast turned out to be somewhat of a nightmare. We were offered 2 pieces of cold toast, a boiled egg, frozen butter, and a pair of chopsticks. If you've never tried spreading frozen butter on a cold piece of toast at 6 a.m. on a train, well, I think this is the experience you can totally skip. Speaking of major events that happen on the train, the border crossing between Mongolia and China is the main one. Here you get to leave the train for up to 5 hours with all your luggage and wait late at night at a pretty empty train station. The border crossing itself is pretty quick, but this is also where gauge change takes place. Russia and Mongolia use the Russian broad gauge and China uses the standard gauge. So at the China-Mongolia border, your train will be re-gauged to match a different set of tracks. As all of this takes place quite late at night, everything at the train station will be closed, and you will be sort of locked in the transit area and will not be able to go past the fence. One of the things I love the most about China is that even borders cannot stop business. As soon as your train arrives, street sellers from the small town you'll be in will bike to the train station and offer a nice selection of snacks from noodles to cookies through the gap in the train station fence. And if you have a Chinese SIM card, you can actually have a hot meal delivered right to the border with one of the Chinese delivery apps like Ele.me or Meituan. On day 6, you get to arrive at your destination. After so much time on the train, walking on your own 2 feet and seeing the world without the filter of a dusty train window feels unusual. But as soon as I stepped foot in Beijing and ordered the Sihon Ximyan, egg tomato noodle, that I've been dreaming about, the 6 days on the train started to slowly fade away. This is why I suggest you take a lot of pictures, or better yet, make a lot of memories. Once in Beijing, I hopped on a high-speed train to Guangzhou, which would take me from the north of China to the very south in under 8 hours. But as convenient and efficient the trip was, it didn't have the slow magic of the TransSiberian. Once in Shenzhen, I ordered some local classics right to the train station at 2 a.m. and tried to adjust to life outside train travel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next adventure, whether slow or fast. With a latte, of course. Have a great day.